My name is Dr. Barbara Gilbert. I'm offering this program as part of the Climate of Community program. We're calling this The Power of Respect in Climate Recovery and Resilience. This program, we have a few team members here today who were introduced, but it's a collaboration between the group in Lawrence that we call True Power for Climate Recovery and Resilience and the Resilient Activist, which is based in the Kansas City area. Our intentions and goals are to address the distress that so many are feeling about the climate crisis. And we're trying to do that by building resilience for managing the climate crisis at the individual level. We're trying to do it by building community, because we believe that as a community, as a bonded whole, as people working in concert with each other, there's going to be very little that can truly take us down. So we want to strengthen community. And we want to conduct research to see if what we're doing is effective. And if it is, we want to help other communities launch similar programs. So that's where we're coming from. Today's session is on the true power of respect, which is one component of the true power paradigm. And we have an introductory video available about that. So what is the true power paradigm? It's simply an empowerment alternative to the dominance paradigm, which is the default, and it's disempowering. And we have to consciously or actively practice the alternative, the dominance power paradigm, for reasons I won't go into now, but are in that introductory video, is what happens when we're not conscious enough. The three core practices of the true power paradigm are respect, which we're going to talk about today, accountability, and responsibility. I do want to do a land acknowledgement. We usually do it right at the beginning, but I'm throwing it in here because this is also related to the respect practice. I live in Lawrence, Kansas, which is near the Kaw River. Lawrence, Kansas is on the ancestral territory of several tribal peoples, including the Kaw, Osage, and Shawnee peoples. I acknowledge that there's an enduring relationship between these peoples and the traditional territories. I recognize and support the sovereignty of 4 federally recognized tribes of Kansas: the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation, the Kickapoo Tribe in Kansas, the Sac and Fox Nation of Missouri in Kansas, and the Iowa Tribe of Kansas and Nebraska. So why do we do a land acknowledgement? First, to place ourselves, to anchor ourselves both in land and in history. I don't have it fully developed, but I'm fairly convinced that the psychological attachment or lack of attachment to land is going to be pretty important in how we proceed in managing the climate crisis. And so we want to place ourselves, to anchor ourselves in the land and the history. And this relates a lot to some of the work Glenn's done. I want to remember that there's a history of stewardship of this land that predates me and my culture's occupancy. I want to remember that this land was taken by force and by terrible violence. And I want that history to inform me and my own choices about how I'm here in this space now. And I want to remember that the force and violence didn't change the wisdom about this land or the relationship to this land that was developed by the indigenous peoples over many centuries. This is a land acknowledgement is a practice of respect. And of course, that's the topic of our session today. This is one way to show respect. So what is respect? If you think about the Latin roots of the word, it's re and spect. Spect in Latin means to look, and re means again. So it means to look again. In its most ancient meaning, it means to look again. Maybe it means to look carefully. Maybe it means to look deeply. Maybe it means to look for understanding or for connection. But I think it also has, in the connotations of respect, especially when we say we're giving respect, it means to give something in the looking. So what do we give? There are 4 levels of respect, and there's a giving at each level. In the first, most basic level of respect, we're giving attention. At the second level, we're giving basic value. At the next level, we're going to give safety, which is also a commitment to non-harm. And at the highest level, we're going to give resources. We're going to nurture. So what does it mean to give attention? Oddly enough, this is kind of a skill we have to think about in certain circumstances, and we'll talk more about that later. We have to think about how to give attention. And we have to think about, what do we give attention to? Where are our blind spots? We want to give attention to self. We want to give attention to other people and to other communities. If we're practicing respect, we want to give attention to nature and to systems. This matters for some pieces we'll get to later quite a lot. So just to give you an example, when I moved here from California 8 years ago, one of the things that grabbed my attention was Kansas skies. In Central California, the skies are always a beautiful blue, but they're always the same blue, and they don't really change very much. And you might get a nice sunset if you're looking at the ocean, but mostly it was just blue. So coming to Kansas, I got a whole different array of skies. This is just a random screenshot from an internet search on Kansas skies. Just take a minute and give attention to that variety of display by nature. It draws you in. It makes you think about clouds. It makes you think about moisture. It makes you think about wind. It makes you think about beauty. There's so much to notice just by giving our attention to it. So Kansas skies got my attention. We can also give our attention to the systems. And because we're talking about nature in this little section, I remember first learning about Fibonacci's sequence. It's fascinating. So, I'm sure all of you are familiar, but in case you're not, this is a pattern in nature. Nature creates itself according to a certain pattern sometimes. And I don't understand nearly all of it, but we can look at this Fibonacci sequence when it appears in nature, in a sunflower or a succulent or a shell, or even in a galaxy. And we have a sense of it being healthy, a system that's working, a system that is generative. We can feel that as we pay attention. And that kind of deep attention is part of what we mean by respect. There's also in nature the flower of life system, if you want to think of it that way. Lots of things in nature form themselves around this particular proportionality, this particular expression. And Da Vinci knew that, and his Vitruvian Man can be superimposed, and you can see he quite consciously used the flower of life to try to bring beauty and balance and harmony to his pictures. So that's giving attention at different levels. We can also give basic value as part of bringing extra respect into a situation. And again, we want to give value to self, others, and I would say especially, or even when they're doing things that upset us, we get more empowered when we're able to bring respect to others, even under those circumstances. We want to give basic value to communities, to ours and others. We want to give basic value to creatures and other life. And we want to give value to natural systems. Here's an example, again, another screenshot. I just put cultures of the world into the internet, did a screenshot of it. And if you pay some attention and give value as you're paying attention, you start to see that all of these cultures have something to teach us. There's a depth of wisdom, like they're telling us about movement, about symbolism, about music, about traditions of philosophy and religion, and interpersonal interactions through community meal. Like you could see and value the wisdom and knowledge inherent in each of these cultures just by looking. I know this is a relatively small screen, but you can grasp a little bit of that if you focus on any given one. You can look at fabric and think about everything that, some of these cultures would have to teach us about fabric even. There's so much there when we give value. Now, these are really, maybe dramatic examples of cultures that are different from ours. Imagine if we did that with the cultures that are 5 blocks over from me, where people might be practicing culture from a different background than I do. That's all still there to notice and give value to and learn from. We can also give basic value to wildlife. And one of my favorite things is the Comedy Wildlife Award. So I'm going to bring that up for you to see. This is we can appreciate wildlife sometimes best by understanding and relating to them, like thinking of wildlife as being like us gives us some a connection, a different kind of valuing of them by seeing them similar to us. So the Wildlife Comedy Awards are always about putting animals in capturing animals in photos that kind of show something that we might think of as a pretty human state or condition or interaction. So I just think they're very funny in a way to appreciate wildlife. It's one avenue that we can use if we're teaching people about how to appreciate wildlife. It's only one, obviously. So in this example, the path to more value, giving more value, is to see ourselves in the animals in enjoyable ways. Obviously, there are 1,000 other ways to value wildlife. I just always find this one amusing. The next level is to give safety. And again, at the most basic level, it's a commitment to non-harm. Gandhi said that the definition of aggression was simply when we impose our will on another person. He saw the imposition of will on another person as a form of aggression, and I would agree with him. He also said the first principle of nonviolent action is that of non-cooperation with everything humiliating. So anything that puts someone else low, or some other creature low, or some other system low, or some other community low, we want to not participate. So at basic minimum, the non-cooperation is part of how we practice respect at this level. Many people, I could lay out a bunch of references, but I definitely agree with the conclusion. Many people would say we're in the most empowered state when we commit no aggression against self. So in my office, some of the people who have the most or the worst climate distress that I hear are people who have a really self-deprecating aspect to how they're thinking about things. So they're thinking, I'm bad because I'm not doing enough. And instead, we would want, in the true power paradigm, to reframe that thought, to still express, the wish for things to be different. But, it would be more like, I don't know what to do, but I'm working on it, would be a more respectful way to treat yourself in that circumstance. Also, we're more empowered when we're committing no aggression against others. And again, even or especially when they're doing things that upset us. In the dominance power paradigm, we're thinking others are bad, they're not doing enough, or they're the problem. And instead, we would, coming from a true power perspective, we would want to say something closer to, I want to communicate how I understand things, and I want to encourage and hold others accountable. So there's a respect for me because I'm listening to how I understand things, and there's a respect for them in encouraging and holding people accountable, but not the imposition of will that Gandhi would talk about. If we commit no aggression against communities, one way to think about this is if I'm benefiting from the exploitation of a particular community, depending on how severe that harm that's being done to that group of people is, I might need to speak out. I might need to refuse the benefit. And I definitely want to keep looking for alternatives. So my most recent example of this is Amazon employees. It's such a convenient service, but if people are being harmed by the way that company is doing business, then I want to speak out. I want to find alternatives. So I'm not using Amazon. I want to keep looking for a way to express the value that I give to people and hold the systems that are devaluing them accountable. We also don't want to do harm to healthy systems. So there's a principle of non-interference with what seems healthy or harmonious or balanced. And we want to avoid the arrogance that I think we've had, as a culture for so long in interacting with natural systems. So again, I'm wanting to give you a picture of what this means, but these are all practices. And I would argue that they're all daily practices, and they're going to take a lot more than me just speaking words at you to grasp them, but I want to give you a roadmap today. And so the highest level of giving respect is giving resources to nurture. So again, we want to nurture or give resources to ourselves, to others, to community, to other life forms, and to systems. So I don't know if I've said it clearly enough, but the more we do these things, the more we give at higher and higher levels, the more empowered we are. And we'll talk more about how giving to others, or, obviously giving to myself will empower me, but giving to others will empower us too. And I'll talk more about that. But these are all the places to look. Can I bring more respect at this level to this group or that group or this system? So when we're feeling disempowered, we want to really look for, where can I bring more respect into the picture? And that can be, it can start with attention and go all the way as high as giving resources. So teaching, parenting, fostering, farming, raising, tending, mentoring, all of those are forms of the highest level of respect. We're giving our resources for the well-being and development of others. But we also need to think about where we're coming from when we do that. In the true power paradigm, nurture is done with attunement to what we understand as healthy. In a dominance paradigm, we might enact these same roles. We might be teaching children, or we might be farming, or we might be, tending to animals in some way. But if we do it from a dominance paradigm, we might be doing it because we want to impose our will. We want to exploit or get what we want out of it. We're not actually giving for the sake of nurturing the well-being of the other. So we want to keep grounding ourselves in what it means to come from a true power paradigm, not the dominance paradigm. So one of my absolutely very favorite, I'm sure all of you are familiar with it, but one of my favorite examples of resourcing a system was when they reintroduced wolves to Yellowstone Park. So I'm going to play you this video. It's, I think, 5 minutes, maybe even less, but let's just watch this. I love listening to that.
One of the most exciting scientific findings of the past half-century has been the discovery of widespread trophic cascades. A trophic cascade is an ecological process which starts at the top of the food chain and tumbles all the way down to the bottom. And the classic example is what happened in the Yellowstone National Park in the United States when wolves were reintroduced in 1995. Now, we all know that wolves kill various species of animals, but perhaps we're slightly less aware that they give life to many others. Before the wolves turned up, they'd been absent for 70 years. That the numbers of deer, because there was nothing to hunt them, had built up in the Yellowstone Park, and despite efforts by humans to control them, they'd managed to reduce much of the vegetation there to almost nothing. They'd just grazed it away. But as soon as the wolves arrived, even though they were few in number, they started to have the most remarkable effects. First, of course, they killed some of the deer, but that wasn't the major thing. Much more significantly, they radically changed the behavior of the deer. The deer started avoiding certain parts of the park, the places where they could be trapped most easily, particularly the valleys and the gorges. And immediately those places started to regenerate. In some areas, the height of the trees quintupled in just 6 years. Bare valley sides quickly became forests of aspen and willow and cottonwood. And as soon as that happened, the birds started moving in. The number of songbirds and migratory birds started to increase greatly. The number of beavers started to increase because beavers like to eat the trees. And beavers, like wolves, are ecosystem engineers. They create niches for other species. And the dams they built in the rivers provided habitats for otters and muskrats and ducks and fish and reptiles and amphibians. The wolves killed coyotes, And as a result of that, the number of rabbits and mice began to rise, which meant more hawks, more weasels, more foxes, more badgers. Ravens and bald eagles came down to feed on the carrion that the wolves had left. Bears fed on it too, and their population began to rise as well, partly also because there were more berries growing on the regenerating shrubs. And the bears reinforced the impact of the wolves by killing some of the calves of the deer. But here's where it gets really interesting. The wolves changed the behavior of the rivers. They began to meander less. There was less erosion. The channels narrowed, more pools formed, more riffle sections, all of which were great for wildlife habitats. The rivers changed in response to the wolves. And the reason was that the regenerating forests stabilized the banks so that they collapsed less often, so that the rivers became more fixed in their course. Similarly, by driving the deer out of some places and the vegetation recovering on the valley sides, there was a soil erosion because the vegetation stabilized that as well. So the wolves, small in number, transformed not just the ecosystem of the Yellowstone National Park, this huge area of land, but also its physical geography.
So I don't know what you all feel, but I have seen that so many times and I still get chills watching it because it just feels good. So this is a piece too that I want to acknowledge about the power practices of the true power paradigm, is that they are inherently reinforcing. They're reinforcing in a completely different way than the dominance paradigm, which can also be reinforcing, but we can feel the healthiness of that. We can feel, you know, the sort of wonder. There's a wonder that goes with some of these power practices. So I'll just let you absorb that for a minute, because we're going to really switch gears here away from that. But any comments or thoughts about that film?
Well, it's barbaraj, you know, that's just amazing. It's just flat out amazing. You know, it's such a wonderful example of how an ecosystem stabilizes given certain fundamental elements, and if you take those elements away, then it destabilizes. So it just is, you know, you expand that to worldwide, and you know, but it's you know, seeing something like that gives you hope.
Yeah. And it just took however many who knew, you know, I don't even know the origins of that program to bring the wolves back to Yellowstone. Maybe other people do, but, you know, it took some people who paid attention, who noticed the systems, understood them, went and told some people, encouraged the funding of it, and then, you know, fostered it, made sure and watched over it, and then documented it so that we could really know the impact of it. So it's, you know, that's powerful. Look at how powerful that was. Does anybody know the origin of that program, how that got started? I don't know that. Any other comments on that? Yeah.
I wanted to add that there's an element of that's very painful too. I'm sure that the wolf introduction program had no intention of achieving what actually occurred. And here in the Northwest, for example, when they do talk about salmon recovery, the number of components, the number of elements involved, the number of disruptions that have gone on is enormous. So in that particular video, it turns out that wolves are some kind of pivotal or apex component. And if you change that, then many things downstream end up changing as well. Here, it's extremely difficult to figure out what the apex is, whether it's bringing down dams that are preventing regeneration, or a colleague here has just researched, it turns out there's a product in tires that gets washed off the road surfaces that leads to infertility in salmon. So the complexity is both wonderful and dispiriting at some level, because if you don't know what the apex, what has the most leverage, you're overwhelmed by the number of elements that need to get changed.
That's a good point. Not all of them are this direct. And I should say that this process, this film, is basically a 25-year, time lapse recording. It took about 25 years for that to get all the way recovered. And it could have been way more complex than just the wolves being gone. You're right. But I do believe that attention, giving the attention, giving our resources to trying to understand it, doing what we know how to do, is going to get us something, and the ongoing effort is going to get us a way better place than where we are now. Yeah. Yes, Wendy, you had a comment.
Yeah, I was thinking the film gives me a lot of hope also, and then it made me think about that in human systems also, and whether a small change, when we feel helpless or I'm not big enough to do anything, this idea of social tipping points, what is it that makes change in larger systems and complex systems? So knowing that some changes really lead to other changes that lead to other changes. So it made me start thinking about how does that work in making social change.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of my favorite quote. Many of you have already heard me do this many times, and Wendy, you might be familiar too, because Clarissa Pinkola Estes, I believe, is a psychoanalyst herself. Are you familiar with her? Okay, I've got to read parts of this then. I should send you the link for the whole thing, but let me find it really quickly here.
Please, yes.
Yeah, so let me figure out where to start. So she says, what is needed for dramatic change is an accumulation of acts, adding more, continuing. We know that it does not take everyone on earth to bring justice and peace, but only a small determined group who will not give up during the first, second, or 100th gale. One of the most calming and powerful actions you can do to intervene in a stormy world is to stand up and show your soul. Soul on deck shines like gold in dark times. The light of the soul throws sparks, can send up flares, builds signal fires, causes proper matters to catch fire. To display the lantern of soul in shadowy times like these, to be fierce and to show mercy towards others, both are acts of immense bravery and greatest necessity. Struggling souls catch light from other souls who are fully lit and willing to show it. If you would help to calm the tumult, this is one of the strongest things you can do. So that idea that, just people doing their thing and letting other people see them do it and caring about what you care about and letting that show, I think gets to what you were speaking about and is a big part of respect, as you pay attention to yourself and give voice to it. Other thoughts from this film or anything else so far?
Barbara, I have a thought kind of in response to Bob's comment about people, one of the stressors is how do you know you're doing the right thing, or how do you know you're doing the specific right thing, or what is the specific right thing? And I know that for me as an environmental activist, a really deep, long-term mindfulness and meditation practice has given me the understanding that we will never know as humans who are not raised in a culture that understands that, that embodies the land, that we don't have that in our lineage, we will never know. But when we do what we do know, when we're able to accomplish what we do know, there's all these underlying benefits that we don't even know about. So I know that Suzanne Simard, I'm sure some of you have heard of her, she developed the concept of the mother trees. I forget which university she's at in Western Canada. And what they found out was with the bears eating the salmon on the side of the river, then what was the remains of the salmon's bones and whatever wasn't eaten, or even their blood that flowed down into the soil, all those antibodies, in the benefits of omega-3, right? It's why we all eat salmon. It's so high, so rich in omega-3. Those nutrients from the bears eating the salmon on the shoreline impacted soil quality and therefore impacted the health of the trees along the shoreline. And she did some studies to show that. So it's like, part of our teaching, what I try and remember when people ask that or have that, how do we know what's the right thing to do or that we're doing the right thing? Or these people have been doing that thing with every good intention and it turned out not to be such a good idea. And how do you even, where do you start, without just getting frustrated and the whole freezer, the whole, whatever your term was for that, Barbara, the
threat response.
The threat response, just like, I'm not going to do anything. And it's that bigger picture and the practice of not holding on to the outcome, but just simply holding on to the intention and with the best of intentions and the best of science and the best that we can do. And it gives me this sense of, okay, so here's the best we can do. And I'm okay with that for now, because I know we're going to learn. I know we're going to make mistakes. And I know over time it'll all get better. So anyway.
Yeah, thank you for that.
I'd just like to respond just briefly. I'm going to have to go after this comment. Basically, I think, over the next couple of 100 years, after hopefully we get past, dumping millions of tons of fossil fuel greenhouse gases into the air, that you just identify things that are harmful and pull back from those, pull back or eliminate them as best you can. And as Sammy said, you'll never know the exact effect of all that, but the less, so it just is, that gets back to one of your principles. But I really appreciated your quote that you gave about people showing their souls and sort of that whole process, and also Wendy's comment about human systems and so I really appreciate that whole emphasis on uncertainty.
So people, Anne and Wendy, this goes to some of what you were saying too about the systems with people and how we bring respect or gain empowerment by bringing respect into interactions with other people. What probably the most common question I get is people being concerned about how to have conversations with family members and friends and other people who disagree with us or who we might see as being, engaging in behaviors that we think are contributing to the difficulties. So respectful communication, where we bring respect into communication, it doesn't mean if I'm respecting somebody that I'm communicating with, it doesn't mean I have to agree with them or endorse them or what they're saying. It doesn't mean that it also doesn't mean I'm going to tell them what to think or what to care about. And it definitely doesn't mean shaming, blaming, bullying, demeaning, all of that. What it does mean is listening. We forget to do that part, and listening specifically to understand and asking to be listened to for the sake of understanding. And it also means looking for shared longings. In this model, another component is the accountability, and there's some tools we have in the accountability piece that help us identify longings. And we want to do that in communication with people. But again, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now. But just to keep that in mind, that we're looking for shared longings when we're engaged in respectful communication. It also means non-harm. It means we kind of draw a line in the sand that we're just not going to step over. I'm not going to say anything that's abusive or aggressive, but also that I hold a boundary that if somebody is being abusive or aggressive with me, I'm going to say, I'm not going to participate in that. We can talk if you can maintain, basic respect for me. And it also means that we're going to support not only our own healthy longings, but the longings of the other person. When we're at the highest level of respectful communication, that's what we're doing. in other workshops, I may go more in depth on what those conversations might sound like more specifically, but they're all I statements for those of you who had enough communications training. You're not saying you're this and you're that. You're saying, when I hear that, to me, it means this, and here's what I feel, and here's what I long for from that. So the I statements, you're going to tell people about you. You're going to ask them about them, but you're not going to tell them about them. And we want to start with attention and basic value. So again, the 4 levels: attention, basic value, non-harm, and nurture are the 4 levels of respect. Those of you who are familiar with Namaste, in a very loosely translated way, it means the divine in me recognizes the divine in you. And it's a greeting in Hindu cultures, and it, it's a start to a conversation. And you can imagine starting, if you did that mindfully, with if you started every conversation from that basis, how differently those might go. So we're going to do a quick little exercise here. We would break into small groups if we had a large one, but we're kind of a small group already. We're just going to one by one go through and give you a respect statement that's kind of a namaste statement. So let's see, I don't know who we want to start with. Anybody want to volunteer to be the first one that we show respect to in this way? All right, Sammy, you're in the line right below me as I look at this. So can we start with you, and can we highlight whoever it is that we're talking to?
I see you, Sammy. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
I see you, Sammy. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
And Trevor?
I see you, Sammy. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark, and I offer you care and support today.
And Bob?
I see you, Sammy. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
And Anne?
I see you, Sammy. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
Any reactions, Sammy, before we go to the next person, or you want to hold that for a bit?
No, I would just say I feel seen. I feel a little uncomfortable being the center of attention, right? But it's interesting to have that moment of knowing that people are literally saying my name and looking at me. Yeah, it's an interesting feeling.
Glenn, you willing to be highlighted? It's a choice, but yes. Okay, let's highlight Glenn. Okay. I see you, Glenn. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today. Sammy?
I see you, Glenn. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark, and I offer you care and support today.
Josh?
I see you, Glenn. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
And Wendy?
I see you, Glenn. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
And Trevor?
I see you, Glenn. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
And Bob?
I see you, Glenn. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
And Anne?
I see you, Glenn. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
Thank you. Any comments, Glenn? Or do you want to just sit with that? It's up to you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's highlight Josh. I see you, Josh. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today. Sammy?
I see you, Josh. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
Glenn?
I see you, Josh. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
And Wendy?
I see you, Josh. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
And Trevor?
I see you, Josh. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
And Bob?
I see you, Josh. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
And Anne?
I see you, Josh. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
Josh, any comments?
Thank you. That's great. I'll sit with that.
Okay. Now let's highlight Wendy. I see you, Wendy. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today. Sammy?
I see you, Wendy. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
Glenn?
I see you, Wendy. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
Josh?
You, Wendy. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
Trevor?
I see you, Wendy. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
And Bob?
I see you, Wendy. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
And Anne?
I see you, Wendy. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
Any comment, Wendy?
I feel my heart beating sort of hard as if I was doing the talking, I guess because I was being named. But I also liked, there was something very personal, like Sammy said, about hearing my name. So.
Okay, great. Where are we? Trevor. Let's highlight Trevor. I see you, Trevor. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
I see you, Trevor. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark, and I offer you care and support today.
I see you, Trevor. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
I see you, Trevor. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
I see you, Trevor. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
Bob?
Hi. I see you, Trevor. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
And Anne?
I see you, Trevor. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
Any comments, Trevor?
Thank you all.
Okay. Let's see, where are we? The pictures keep popping around. So I think we're up to Bob. Let's highlight Bob. I see you, Bob. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
I see you, Bob. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
I see you, Bob. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
I see you, Bob. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
I see you, Bob. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
I see you, Bob. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
I see you, Bob. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark, and I offer you care and support today.
Any comments, Bob?
Thank you. It's nice.
Okay. And then Anne. Can we highlight Anne? There we are. I see you, Anne. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
I see you, Anne. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
I see you, Anne. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
I see you, Anne. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
I see you, Anne. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
I see you, Anne. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
I see you, Anne. I recognize you as a human being with a unique spark. I offer you care and support today.
Any comments, Anne?
Thank you, everyone. It is really sort of an interesting experience to do something like this over Zoom, I have to say, but it's good. Thank you.
I did. When I was talking to Sammy about this, I'm like, oh, I just don't know if I can do this over Zoom, but we did it, and I can, I can feel it. So I appreciate everybody participating in that. Sometimes when I do this, people say, oh, it gets so repetitive, or people really feeling it. But some of what I want you to get from the repetition is the habit of that, the practice of that mindset. And I want to kind of give you all homework to spend your day thinking that, whether you say it to people or not, as you engage with people. Sometimes when I'm starting to feel some despair, distress about the state of things in the world, I do simple things like smiling at the grocery clerk, or saying something a little bit more personal, or smiling at people, as I walk down the street, to just acknowledge them, to see them, to give them value through attention, give them attention that is valuing. And it, it puts you in a different place. It really does. And so I want to encourage you to practice that. And this is just one way. Sometimes when I do this exercise in person, which it does get easier in person, I ask people to come up with their own words, but that kind of puts people on the spot a little bit too. But you can feel what it was like to just get simple attention that was personalized with your name, that was, benign at worst, and more than that, more deeply caring in other ways. So, when you think about some of the difficult conversations that we have with people, if we can start with that mindset, like if I'm having a conversation with somebody, I'm doing it because I care about the relationship. If they're people that I don't have much investment in, I'm probably not going to talk to them. I'm probably just going to set boundaries or something like that. But for people we care about, starting from that place, starting from that valuing place, and of course, absolutely from a valuing place about ourselves, is going to put the conversation on a completely different footing. So thank you all for participating in that. And again, I encourage you to carry that practice of respect for others into your daily life. I'm going to go ahead and return to this. So one question people sometimes have is, how does my giving respect to you empower me? Because isn't this all about empowerment of ourselves? And yes, it is. And if we think about it, the simple answer is that it will keep you more whole. How? Because in order to disrespect someone or something else, you have to deny, numb out, amputate the part of you that has anything in common with them. If I am going to be mean to you, I have to not think of you as an equal, valuable human being that is worthy of my, kindness or concern, or even basic safety, non-violence kinds of approach. So if I've amputated that in myself in order to treat you that way, I am less whole. So I've done harm to myself by disrespecting you. We can take that into the realm of nature too. To disrespect any part of nature, I have to turn a blind eye to its beauty. I have to turn a blind eye to its function within the harmony of a system. That also means that I can't see its relationship to me or my relationship to it. I can't see the part of me that's connected to that part of nature. And if I don't know that relationship to me, I'm going to not make fully informed choices. And I think about, I don't know if y'all have seen the Big Little Farm documentary. I thought that was a perfect example of how, if like there's that moment where they're killing, is it coyotes? I think that he ends up killing because they're butchering the, just slaughtering all the chickens, and they get very upset about the chickens being slaughtered. And so then they start killing, I think it was a coyote. But that ends up just having this ripple effect on the whole farm that messes things up. So there was a connection to self that was invisible in certain moments of time. And I would argue when the threat response came up in people, they couldn't see that relationship. But as soon as they start trying to rethink it, they're like, I don't want to be people. We don't want to be people who are killing the coyotes. We've started this farm with a whole different mindset. Now, what do we need to do? That, when we set up that boundary of a line we're not going to cross, we come up with those creative understandings and the creative solutions. But that disrespect is going to disempower me just as much as it disempowers the other creature, the other person. I first learned this piece of respect. I used to work with convicted violence offenders, and part of our work was to assess, the history of violence in their lives. And usually we knew we needed to assess, when did they go numb? And I remember this story of this man telling me about when he first learned to hunt. He was quite young, like 7 years old, and his dad decided it was time, as part of the tradition, they were going to take him out hunting. And there was a deer, and apparently it wasn't all that common. I don't know about deer hunting, so I'm going to sound like I don't know as you hear me talk about it. But the way I understood what he described, sometimes you could spend a whole day sometimes and not see a deer. And so a deer came, his dad was in the blind with him. His dad gives him the shot, which was this huge privilege, right? In that system, to give somebody, especially a new hunter, a shot. So his dad points and tells him to shoot. And he knows if he doesn't do it, he felt he was going to disrespect his dad. So he goes ahead and shoots it. And he talked about the devastation internally of seeing what he had done. And he was aware enough to kind of follow his own process. He could describe how numb he got after that he couldn't afford in his mind to think of what he had done as something that was against his values in any way, because that would put him at odds with his father and this whole fraternity of men that he was being brought into. And so he numbed out the part of him that was appalled by the death of the animal. And as he went through his life, that's part of him stayed numb and kept him from seeing the harm that he was doing in relationships too. So, that numbing of the self in order to tolerate what's going on is very disempowering to us. We become, shells if it goes on enough, we become more empty. So what we're doing in that circumstance, like what the boy was doing when he had to shoot the deer. He had to numb out what I would call the highest human aspects. He had to numb out his compassion and his empathy. And so whenever we're disrespecting somebody else or an aspect of nature, we're numbing the best parts of ourselves. We're numbing the parts of ourselves that are capable of these creative, transcendent solutions that we're going to need. So all the respect I give to you is going to empower me. All the respect I give to nature is going to empower me as well. Does that all make sense? Can you see that connection? Okay. So one of the things I really wanted to make sure we had time for, let me see where we're at. Yeah, we're doing good. The issue of respect comes into play when looking at privilege-based inequalities. Maybe you can already see how, but let's walk through that a little bit. So in the true power paradigm, we define privilege to mean access to necessary resources, and these are enforced with dominance paradigm tactics like violence, fear, withholding necessities. So access to resources is enforced, and the access that is given is without a merit or a need basis. So it's just given because you're my buddy and I want you to have resources so that you know, maybe because you're going to do me a favor, or maybe it's because I feel like you're in my circle of care. But either way, it doesn't have to do with merit or need. And this is the maybe most important part. The person who's privileged with that access is not held accountable for how the resources are used. So, you know, if I have a job as a farmer and I've raised food and I have surplus, like I have created that surplus, and my merit, if you will, is that I created it. And the kind of natural way that things are going to work is that I'll be held accountable for how those are used. So accountability really matters. The idea of merit, and we want to think about the idea of community decision-making around who merits or needs access to resources. So privilege comes into play. There's so much more that could be said, and there are people who could say it better than me, but that's our basic definition. So systemic racism, sexism, ableism, all the systemic isms are based in overprivileging one group over another, and that being reinforced with the dominance paradigm tactics. The climate crisis is deeply rooted in privilege and in the dominance paradigm. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But we can empower ourselves and empower groups when we bring respect for all people, when we advocate for policy and practices that do that too. And when we do that, we can undermine privilege-based inequalities. So just, I don't know, last couple of days or so on my Facebook feed, Sierra Club comes up with this, it shows up in my feed that Sierra Club has created this slide series that I think illustrates this completely. And it's about energy burden and how they don't use those words, but how privilege plays a part in that, how institutionalized racism plays a part. So here's their slide presentation. So they say energy burden is the percentage of household income spent on energy, and a family is energy burdened when the energy costs are higher than 6% of the household income. So some families are going to be more energy burdened than others. What increases the energy burden? Homes with poor insulation, drafty windows, outdated appliances. The harmful effects of inequality then start to build up. In order to afford those high energy bills, the families might sacrifice nutrition, medicine, other necessities. There are energy assistant programs, but they rarely focus on the source of the problem, as Sierra Club sees it, which is to improve the energy efficiency of the home. So what should you do? Funding energy efficiency and weatherization will provide a long-term and equitable solution that is also a critical step towards restorative justice. So they're saying funds for improving housing efficiency have to target low-income, high energy burden homes first. So they're paying attention, they're noticing who's more impacted by this. They're looking at the impact of overprivileging, where are these resources going, and asking us to equalize that. They explain why the energy burden is an example of structural racism due to segregation and generations of racist policies that reinforce it. Black families are more likely to live in older, energy-wasting homes, and these families pay high bills for heating, air conditioning, and cooking, but still live in homes that are less safe and less healthy than they should be. So the Sierra Club is getting involved in racism. How does that happen? You know, and again, it's because they recognize that the climate crisis is rooted in the same privilege-based dominance paradigm as systemic racism. So Sierra Club has to deal with systemic racism if they're going to deal effectively with the climate crisis, and so do we. Black Lives Matter has to deal with the climate crisis to effectively deal with systemic racism, and so do we. So at the root of it all is this disrespect, this inattention to or devaluing of certain groups and communities over others. How does bringing respect to all the peoples in our community help empower each of us? Again, just as bringing respect to other people helps us personally, same with bringing respect to all sections of the community will keep our communities more whole and sturdy and resilient, which of course helps us each to thrive better. So you see all this connection that bringing more respect has its own power. So the summary for the main components or the main points of today is that when we're feeling helpless or disempowered, we need to try to raise the level of respect that we're bringing to a situation. This will pull us out of the dominance paradigm, and it will increase our ability to see and value and respond effectively to the situation for what it is. All three of the true power practices, respect, accountability, responsibility, will disintegrate dominance if a critical mass of people are engaging in them. I mentioned I used to work with convicted violence offenders, and we were part of a community-wide effort in Santa Clara County where each part of the system had its own role to play in all of that. And we were all teaching a consistent message, and the rates of domestic violence dropped pretty dramatically in the years following the institution of that program. So I've seen it happen in other issues, and I have no doubt it can happen here too. Just respect, even without the other two power practices, will benefit you and the other person, the other life form, your community. So I don't want you to think if you don't have it all going on all at once that you're not going to be empowered. Any level, any increased respect you can bring to any interaction is going to empower you. And then if we do add those other practices of accountability and responsibility, which in brief are covered in the introductory video I mentioned, but we'll have more in-depth coverage of that in other sessions. So I want to put that all together, you know, where does respect fit in the true power paradigm, but also all by itself is very useful, empowering practice.